Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. I'm your host, Shane McInnes, lover of nerdy stuff, collector of expensive pieces of plastic, and guy who reads books that most people would think are boring for fun. Hey, Graythar, how's it going? Hope everybody's having a good one. It's been an interesting week so far for me. Not necessarily a bad week or a good week, just a very, very full week. Lots of work. Lots and lots and lots and lots of work. But we are approaching the end of the term, and that's part of the process. You know, everybody wants to wait until the last minute with stuff. So I'm a bit behind the 8 ball when it comes to keeping emails up to date and doing grading stuff and trying to work with students and get stuff in late. It's been a bit of a mess. But that's okay. It usually is. I get a couple of weeks off coming up, and that's going to be very nice. Very, very nice. So, hope you're all doing well. Hope everybody's had a good one. I know that Graythar just got some great news about a job recently. Congrats again on that. I know that is a weight off. Completely understand that feeling. So, how's everybody else? Let me know how you are. Feel free, as always, to participate in chat. Throw whatever you want to in the blank. And our puppy is apparently woofing at something. There's no telling what the puppy is woofing at. The puppy woofs at everything. So you know how puppies are. Aw, I am Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
Thank you all for that. Thank you, Graythar. Much appreciated, my friend. Oh, and I got some sort of emote. I got some kind of... Oh, it's an angry chess piece that appears to be a queen that is blowing something up. I guess this is in reference to the Queen's Gambit. Okay. I don't know when I would use that emote, but I'll see if I can work it in somewhere. You're having a craving for something sweet. That is basically the state in which I live, Vern. I have such a bad sweet tooth. Such a bad one. It's a constant struggle on my part not to just eat horrible for me food all the time. It's a challenge. It's a daily thing. I've tried to curb that. I usually try to keep some sort of like a little piece of hard candy around. And if I really get like this urge, like, man, I really want to eat like half a box of cookies, I'll go have a Jolly Rancher and see if that that curbs my desire. And sometimes it works. Other times I still want to eat half a box of cookies. Card candy and grapes usually do it. Yeah, something that hits that sweet dopamine and hard candy. Yeah. I could probably substitute the Jolly Rancher for grapes and still be a little bit better off. Grapes are very hit or miss for me. Sometimes I'm really in the mood for grapes, and other times I don't want to do a grape at all. Just not my thing. It also depends on what kind of grapes they are. But that's a whole other story, right? You all aren't here to hear about my finicky eating habits. You're here to talk about history. You have moments of weakness. Pepperidge Farm remembers. Do they remember, or do they cause them? Are they purposefully triggering these memories? Do they orchestrate all of these for us to make us crave them in the first place? Do they secretly have addictive, psychoactive ingredients in their cookies? I don't remember the last time I had a Pepperidge Farm cookie, just to be real, though. So, okay. To sort of catch everybody up on what's going on, we have come to the end of a phase. And I figured out about 15 to 20 streams ago that I needed to approach things in chunks of time instead of a purely straight chronology, because it's just too difficult to talk about every single thing that happened in 1 year, right? So, for example, if I picked the year 250 BC and I tried to describe every single thing that happened in 250 BC, that would be an enormous task. That would be incredibly difficult to present and incredibly difficult to follow. So what I've been doing is designating chunks of time. And for the last maybe 8 or 9 streams, we have been in a phase that covers the period of time between about 500 BC and about 200 BC. And we have come to the end of that phase. And we are about to enter a new phase of history. And I think it's going to be somewhere between, I haven't figured it 100% out yet. Maybe 199 to about 50 BC is what I'm thinking. But I have to do a lot of planning and sort of strategy, figuring all of this stuff out. So I don't actually know what we're doing next week. I know that on Tuesday next week, we're having a viewer request stream on the Contra, which is sort of forefront. But I actually have a weekend off for the first time in goodness knows how long. And I do mean truly off, where I don't have to do sociology master's work or school work or have any sort of, I don't know, constraints like, oh, you got to go do this thing. But we did grocery shopping last weekend, so I am set for another week. We usually try to do grocery shopping in 2 weeks sections. So this weekend, one of the things that's on my list is to figure out where we're going next. And if you keep an eyeball on the Discord, I will be posting what we look like in the next phase. And I also think that I'm going to add a couple of channels to the Discord. I think one of them is going to be pets. I feel as if that might be something that everybody loves. Oh, I did not know that I have duties over the weekend. I'll make a list. Thanks, babe. So maybe I won't have as much time as I expected. Hey, Motivic, how's it going, my friend? Anyway, so keep an eyeball on the Discord, and I'll let everybody know when stuff comes around. So that being said, today's stream or tonight's stream or whatever time of the day it is where you're located is one where I want to introduce a lot of players that are going to be substantial influencers in the next phase. Because as we've discussed in the past, history is going to continue to expand. And the amount of history that we know is going to continue to expand. And this is partially because the spread of things like writing and more advanced levels of civilization, the longer we go through time, the more people have that, which also means the more that we know about these people and the more that we know about their history. So we're going to slow down a lot. And if you have been keeping up sort of with the show since the beginning, or for those of you that aren't, I can sort of give you a little bit of a spill. Our first 5 or 6 episodes covered roughly 215 or so thousand years of human history in about 6 or 7 episodes. And then we spent, hey KP, we spent 7 or 8 episodes in the Bronze Age, and then 9 or 10 episodes in the Iron Age, and now we've spent 7 or 8 episodes in just a 300-year span of time. So we're slowing down, and that's expected, and I knew that this was going to happen, and it's not a surprise to me. I'm just trying to give you all a little bit of a knowledge. But as history progresses, we get more people. Like, this is sort of like you finish the game and then you unlock new characters, right? So we finished a phase, so we've unlocked the new players that are going to come into the field that are going to be important in the next phase of our discussions. But most of these are not going to ever hit what we might consider big, gigantic regional powers. These are going to be big players in the game. They're going to have significant impacts. Most of them are going to last well into the AD time period, but they're never going to be dominant regional powers, except for one. And when we get to that one, I'll tell you which one it is. So tonight's stream title is Second to Some, because all of these are going to end up being captured or dominated by some other larger culture eventually. And while they'll have a good run of things, they're not going to end up completely independent. The next module of the season pass unlocked. Right, so this is like DLC for history. It's like R.R. Martin writing his books, and now you have so many characters that it's freaking difficult to write it. Yeah, exactly. It's hard to juggle all of the different narratives and streams and timelines. So I need to sit down and actually do some strategic planning. And I didn't actually know that I was 100% through with this stream until about 45 minutes ago, because I was on the fence about including another group, but I think they need an independent stream in the second phase instead of half of a stream now and half of a stream later, if that makes any sense. So there's a little bit of a give and take here in my brain about how all of this stuff is going down. So as always, please ask questions if you are interested. Please feel free to comment with all of your sarcastic and or bad jokes or dad puns or really just anything. I'm so glad to have everybody here. These streams, and I know I've said this before too, but these streams really are a bright spot in my life right now. So much stuff is going crazy in 2020 that it's nice to be able to hang out with like-minded individuals, and we can have fun and goof off and make bad jokes and get a little bit of social stuff back and forth. And I really appreciate all of you. I really do. So, okay, so let's talk about some of these people. We're going to start off by showing you a map. And I know that you're like, oh, Shane shows us a map. No duh, that's going to happen like 7 times tonight. I think it's only going to happen 5 times tonight. But I want to show you this because I want to sort of show you what the world looks like. And I found this map a few weeks ago, and I shared it with KP and Mac, the 2 mods. And this is what we're dealing with. So let's look at this map right here. So on this map, what we can see are cultures that exist right around 200 BC. How many people are on that map? Goodness gracious, how many people are on that map? And if we zoom in here, we end up with all of these different groups of people. And some of these people we've mentioned, we've mentioned the Mauryan Empire. We've mentioned the Han Dynasty and the Kalinga and the Cholas and the Seleucids and the Ptolemies and the Romans and the Carthaginians and the Scythians. And we've mentioned a lot of these people, but look at exactly how many of them are out there. And each one of these groups of people has an independent culture, has a history of their own, has some sort of existing knowledge about them so that we can draw even these rough border lines about exactly where they are. And if I had shown you this picture at the beginning of the last phase, which started at about 500 BC, a big chunk of this map would not have been filled in. And the reason I wanted to share this map is to just really sort of drive home this point that by this time in history, the world is filling up, right? Populations are growing across the world, cultures are expanding, civilizations are developing, and people are changing. But it's also helpful to remember that these are all just still people, right? They want the same things that we do. And they're all going to want independence. They're going to want to be able to handle their own dealings. They're going to be able to want to, rule themselves. Some of them are going to get that option and some of them aren't. And some of them are going to have brief kind of glimpses of it, and others are just going to be really successful and lucky and get their desires. So we're going to start by talking about a group of people over in Asia who are going to be really big in a couple of our streams coming up when we talk about Han Dynasty China. And their name is the Xiongnu. So this group of people is, let me show you their map just to kind of drive home where they are. I can point to the region today, which is roughly Mongolia, northern parts of China, southern parts of Russia, over into what the region we know as Manchuria, over into parts of what is Kazakhstan and some of the other Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan countries. But roughly, though, what we would consider where the modern day country of Mongolia is, which is sort of right about here. And you go, well, are these people Mongolians, or are they the ancestors of the Mongols? And the answer is kind of. It's hard to say exactly who the Xiongnu are when it comes to genetics. They are a steppe people. They live on STEPPE, right? Which is an open kind of border or open flat pasture land. I don't know why I said borders there. It's on the northern border of China. But these Xiongnu people seem to be from a lot of different ethnic groups, and they have a few big burial sites. They seem to believe that certain regions were, I guess, particularly religiously linked with dead people. So we have a few really big burial sites where I say we, like I, always out there doing the excavation work myself in Mongolia, right? Anyway, archaeologists have found a lot of I shouldn't say a lot, several of their big burial sites. And one of the great things about this particular region is that it's fairly dry and the bones are preserved fairly well. And we've been able to do a lot of DNA recovery from some of these people, some of the skeletons. And they show genetic markers that stretch all over Central Asia and over into even what we would call Western Asia, which is, this kind of area over here. Eurasia might be a better word for it if you're familiar. But it looks like these people have ethnic ties back to the Scythians, who were a group of people from over here. But they also are going to be related to several groups that come after them, like the Huns, and then later the Mongol Empire, people like Genghis Khan. You were going to ask if they were the children of northern China's second wife. They are not Chinese, ethnically speaking. They are sort of this pan-Eurasian group, and it doesn't look like they were necessarily homogenous. It looks like they had a lot of different individuals from a lot of different backgrounds that sort of all kind of bought into their lifestyle. They're going to have a lot of trouble, though, figuring out exactly who all these people are. Sometimes we dig up a burial site and it looks like they're all from this part of Eastern Asia, but other times we dig up a site and do DNA testing and they're from the northern region up in, almost in Siberia. They're kind of hard to pin down, but we know a lot about them once they show up. And we know that they were herdsmen. We know that they were very big on horses, horsebacks, people, and horse trading are going to be a big thing tonight. That's a big theme. A lot of these people are going to be really big on the horseback archery kind of way of life. The Xiongnu are going to have some cities, and they're going to have a fairly organized government for quite some time, but they tended to go through periods of concentration and then semi-nomadism. The horse is the new elephant. Move over, elephants. We'll talk about elephants a little bit, and I've even got a picture of an elephant. Kind of a picture of an elephant. But yeah, the way of the elephant is kind of going away. Oh, those horses, they're so hot right now. I caught that one. Well, I mean, the defeat of the Carthaginians at the hands of the Romans is going to tell a lot of people that elephants aren't unanimously powerful anymore. Now, they're still going to be used in warfare. I mean, the Romans pick up elephants and use elephants in their own expansion stuff. The Romans will basically use anybody in their warfare. They have mounted camelback artillery or archers at one point. The dromedary corps, no joke. But elephants are not the end-all be-all of warfare. They are very big and they're very powerful, and they will definitely wreck your infantry. But here's the thing about horses. Horses are a lot faster. Lots of elephants in therapy right now. Oh, poor elephants. We still remember you, elephants. You had a good run in phase 4 of Adventures in History. Cheers to the elephants. Maybe I should name the phases like Phase Elephant. The elephant phase of history. The elephant years. Anyway. But yeah, the horses are faster. And one of the things that's going to really sort of lead to the falling away of the elephants being the end-all be-all is developments in bow making. Composite bows become a fairly standard piece of at least Asian warfare by this point. A composite bow is made by layering a whole bunch of different strips of wood and or bone together, and then sort of shellacking them and sort of sealing them into one big piece. And what this does is actually allows you to put a lot more torque on the bowstring, which of course means that you can shoot your arrow further. And if I can ride on the back of a horse and shoot you from 150 yards away, your elephant is ultimately not going to win that, because I'm going to be able to ride in a big circle around your elephant and shoot out its eyeballs eventually. And then it's just going to trample whatever is in front of it, including what might be your own army. So once you figure out how to beat an elephant, elephants are still scary, but they're not the nuclear weapons of the ancient world that they used to be. I remember that great documentary on elephant horse warfare, the Battle of Pelennor Fields. Oh, man. Yeah. And who won that battle? I mean, just to mention, like, who won that battle? It is fair to say, though, that the horses did not beat the elephants until the ghosts showed up. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the level of Tolkien nerdadry that KP and I have, the Battle of Pelennor Fields is the big fight at the end of Return of the King, where all of the Rohirrim and the Gondor people are fighting the big army of Mordor, and the army of Mordor has Oiliphants in them from the Haradrim and the far southern part of Middle-earth. And that one wicked elf sniper, it still only counts for one, though. Anyway, let's get back to the Xiongnu. I love you guys. Anyway, so who are these Xiongnu people culturally speaking? Well, in their family groups, they are very polygamous. They have lots of kids. They have really big families. Their families are usually oriented into clans, where you have one ruling patriarch figure and sort of the extended family around that person. Religiously speaking, they're very shamanistic. They are big on the spirits and the standing stones and the rocks being possessed of spiritual importance. The Chinese called these people worshippers of rocks. It's not necessarily that they worshipped rocks. Of course, this is a sort of a slant against them being animistic. They believed in sacred locations that they would mark by standing stones. Of course, they're not worshiping the actual rock. They would be conducting religious ceremonies in this sacred location. We all know how that goes. I am nerd-splaining to you. Sorry, Neo Realms. I didn't. Not everyone is as up on Tolkien as some of my friends are, and I'm not nerd-splaining to be rude. I just want everybody to be in on the joke. Welcome, Neo Realms. Again, for those of you that might be new to the channel or have not been around, please go check out Neo Realms. Great artist, another fellow teacher, teaches art here in Mississippi, also works on some traditional style art, does computer rendering stuff, has also been doing some 3D printing and model painting later. Go check him out. Really cool stream. Definitely somebody to spend some time with. So they speak a language that is pretty clearly similar to later Turkish languages. We don't know exactly where their language originated, or if in fact this was the sort of original Proto-Turkish language or not. They do have a system of writing that is not a full alphabet. It's more of an iconographic writing style, somewhere between 20 and 24 symbols, somewhere in there. And we don't have many examples of this. A lot of people think it was more of a runic style where, you know, of course you write things, but it's not something you would do commonly. There's not a lot of documents that we have from the Xiongnu stuff. A lot of the historical data that we have from contemporary sources comes from China. Dinner is done. Oh, what's for dinner? I had leftover pork ribs, and they were delicious. So, these are the Xiongnu people, and they're going to become an organized group under a guy named Modun Chanyu. Chanyu, who is going to initially be a territorial leader. So he's sort of a kind of regional clan leader. You had pho. I'm jealous. We had pho a couple of weeks ago. It was quite tasty. That's a fantastic villain name, Modun Chanyu. I don't know why I just did a fake Asian accent. That was probably very culturally insensitive of me. It was mostly because I've been stuck in this Mortal Kombat brain theme. Like, oh, I've beat the game. Now I have to unlock new characters. I guess I could do Smash Brothers, which is kind of a more favorable fighting game now. A new player, or was it a new challenger approaches? And Twitch just demonetized Shane. Yeah, well, come January the 22nd, I guess I might have to say a lot of things more carefully speaking, but I don't want to get into all of that. Anyway, Modun Chanyu is originally a regional leader. He has sort of a clan status leadership. He's going to fight against the remnants of the Qin dynasty in China. At the end of the Qin dynasty, China is invading up in this region. This is in the very tail end of the Qin dynasty. The Chinese are going to expand up into this region, and Modun Chanyu is going to be one of the regional leaders that's trying to push them back out. They are successful to a limited extent, but one of the things that Modun Chanyu recognizes is that China is becoming very regionally strong, and they're unifying again after that long period of warfare. So if the Xiongnu want to be able to protect themselves, they need to unify. And he is going to be one of the motivating factors in the unifying of all of the different Xiongnu tribes. This is going to run down into right about 209 BC, and he's actually going to be the emperor of the Xiongnu until about 174. But we're not going to get all the way into the 170s. We're not actually going to cross into the 100s at all tonight. So one of the things that the Xiongnu decide to do is to do the same sort of thing that China was trying to do to them, to other smaller groups. And there were lots of other people groups around the Xiongnu. And if you sort of think back to that image that I showed at the beginning, there are tons of people in this region. There's a group of people called the Donghu. There's another one called the Yueji, the Dinglin. These are smaller groups sort of even around the Xiongnu that get brought into the larger Xiongnu Empire. And Modun Chanyu and his Xiongnu Empire are going to be some pretty fierce foes for the Chinese for about the next 150 to 175 years or so. So we'll be talking more about the Xiongnu later on. Moving on around, and I've started over here as far in the Asian side of things as I can go, and we're going to sort of move over towards the west a little bit. There's a group of people. Ooh, man, I forgot to show all sorts of pictures. Let me back up a little bit and show you this guy. So one of the things about the Xiongnu that we have is actually a fairly sizable amount of little artistic pieces like this guy. You can tell just by looking at this, if you know anything about Chinese art, that this has a few elements of what looks like Chinese art in it, but the person in there is clearly not a Chinese person. This is, it would have been a warrior. This would have been the rest of his sword, and it's likely that he would have had a shield over here, sort of inside of this larger pendant or medallion. The Xiongnu had a pretty nice system of artwork and metalwork. They borrowed a lot from the Chinese, but by the time the Xiongnu had become a sort of unified empire, it appears that the Chinese actually brought a lot of influence into, especially the northern Chinese region, from the Xiongnu. So we had a little bit of a cross-cultural pollination of art and dress styles for a little while there, which is not uncommon when you have cultures that are right on top of each other like that. Okay, so let's talk about these guys. Backwash, if you will. Well, backwash has such a negative connotation to it. I don't know if I like that word or not. I like cultural interaction or sharing. I don't know if I want to go with backwash. Okay, so let's talk about the Diadochean Kingdom or the Greco-Bactrian Kingdom, which you can see shown here on the map. One thing that you may have heard of, and this might be a stretch, we don't hear very much about the Greco-Bactrians, but one sort of additional nickname for the Greco-Bactrians was the Empire of 1,000 Cities. They do have camels there. Yes, they do, Vern. Good call. So these people sat right here. And you might go, wow, that's kind of a rugged, weird-looking area. Why would anybody want to kind of hold that area? I mean, if we're just looking at it from space, what's the draw? Well, the draw is not necessarily in the agricultural capability. The draw is in the regional importance. It used to be green. No, actually, this region has always been arid and rugged. This is not Northern Africa. In this scenario, we can fairly well trust that things were pretty much like this, even way back then. But we have to start looking at this in terms of sort of geographic regional importance. If you are controlling this zone right here, you are the link between China and all of its big honking stacks of money and the Mediterranean world with all of its big honking stacks of money. And if trade wants to go through to Europe, it has to come through you. And if it's going to go back to China, it also has to go through you. And the cities right here in this central part of Asia are fabulously wealthy because they are hubs of trade. No, it's not going through Tibet. The Tibetan plateau itself at this point doesn't even have what we would call an organized civilization. They had some semi-nomadic cultures that lived there, but you don't see many cities in this area. For the majority of ancient history, trade did not run down the coastline here of Asia. The big swamps here prevent easy trade on land from China to India, and even stuff like Buddhism. When Buddhism was leaving India and spreading over to China, one might think, hey, it's just right there, just but that's not how it went. It actually went up through the Khyber Pass into this sort of Greco-Bactrian world, and then into China over this direction through this region right here, which is called the Tarim Basin, and then over into northern and western China this way. So even though India and China are not really separated by that much, this region's dense jungle, elevation, and frequent rainfall and abundance of rivers makes it really hard to move trade through that area. So you have this sort of foreboding height of the Tibetan plateau, and then this really sort of multiple level treacherous region right here, which is modern day countries of Myanmar and Thailand. But this region, despite it looking like it's running through pretty deep mountains, is actually the chosen way to get through this stuff. And especially by 200 or so BC, the Han Dynasty, which has become the influential ruler of China over here, is really pushing out trade through this area, and it's going through the Greco-Bactrian region. And this region had initially, you might be wondering where the Greco comes from, but you also, if you've been watching the stream, you probably can guess where the Greco comes from. These were originally the really far eastern satrapies of Alexander the Great's empire. So that would have meant that they were originally part of the old Achaemenid Persian Empire, and then later part of Alexander's empire. But Alexander actually even expanded further than even the Achaemenid Persians did. And when Alexander died and all of that stuff was going on where they were fighting each other and all of the generals were sort of chunking up pieces of his empire, this group decided, we're just going to go at it by ourselves. And of course, this is going to cause trouble, and there's going to be fighting between these people and others in the region. But this region is essentially, when it becomes its own independent political identity, kind of a crust of Greek people over a larger mantle of native Bactrian and Sogdian Central Asian peoples. But the thing about that is it doesn't stay that way. Even as early as the first generation of Greco-Bactrian independent rulers, you see these people marrying into the native population. They were smart enough to understand that they were not going to be able to rule this area as a small ethnic minority dominating a much larger and substantially more wealthy, to boot, Asian mix of ethnic groups. So you see really clear evidence of intermarriage. The DNA evidence that comes out of this area backs up this sort of intermarriage of Greek people. But it's fair to say also that the leaders kept as much tie as they could back to the Greek world. Was it a hodgepodge of religion too? That is a great question. And the answer is yes, it was. Now, initially, it's going to be, again, sort of this two-tiered system where the leaders are Hellenistic Greeks, and they're going to follow the Greek way of religion, and the native people are going to be a regional mix of Zoroastrians, Hindus, and Buddhists. But over time, the Hellenistic influence is going to seep into that. You actually see the first visualized depictions of Hindu gods on coinage in the Greco-Bactrian kingdom. Hindu people, when they made money, did not tend to put pictures of gods on it until this point, when the Greeks are like, man, we put gods on everything. Put gods on your coins. So you see the first images of people like Indra and Brahma and Vishnu and Lakshmi on Greco-Bactrian coins, because these people are going to very quickly begin this really interesting blend of Greek and Buddhist and Hindu and Zoroastrian faiths. The successor kingdom to the Greco-Bactrian kingdom, which sort of changes or transposes names to the Indo-Greek kingdoms, is going to be almost purely Buddhist, which is really, really interesting because you don't hear a lot about Greco-Buddhism, but it exists. It does. Anyway, so you see these people merging and intermarrying and overlapping their cultures and sharing all of these different ideas. Their language is no different. You see an original local level use of language, but because Greek had become this international language of trade, you start seeing a lot of Greek words showing up in these local languages, and you end up with languages like Sogdian. I don't know if anybody knows about the Sogdians. Anybody know Sogdians from Sogdia? Where's my map? It's one of these regions right around in here. But the Sogdian language is this interesting little mix of native Asian language that had a lot of Hindu influence from India, but then has all these Greek words kind of, and Greek syntax and Greek language and, grammar and diction kind of crammed backwards into it as well. Neat little language. But this is what happens when you have these Greco-Bactrians. You have people that are from one group and they bring their very big influence from the Greek world into this other area. They all start mixing, and it's a really cool little place. The region itself is first led by a guy named Diodotus. Diodotus was originally one of the satraps of the Alexandrian Empire. He's also then going to be one of the satraps of the Seleucid Empire, but he's going to break away in about 245, and he's going to establish himself an independent kingdom. I have a neat little coin. Lots of coins tonight, by the way. So this is Diodotus, and you see his name here. Diodotus, or Diodotoi, but you know what it means. Diodotus. Crawls into class late as quietly as possible and slips into a seat in the back. I see you, hunk. That's great. Nobody gets perfect attendance gold star, so don't worry about it. How's it going, man? Hope you're having a good one. Roll a stealth check. Failed. You typed it into the chat. That coin is thick. Oh, yeah. Well, I guess I need to... maybe I could put my mouse over this right here to... Okay, I guess that's somewhat censoring. Yeah, natural 1. Okay. Wish I had brought some D20 with me in class so I could have made some D&D jokes. Who would have gotten it, though? Most of my teachers would have thought less of me. Anyway, so this is Diodotus. Pointing at the crack just makes you look at it. So anyway, this is Diodotus, but I also have a coin of a later ruler, a guy named Demetrius, and I wanted to show you this coin because of the need I felt to satisfy people's elephant craving, which I feel like I'm almost pandering to now. But I actually have a reason for showing this particular photograph. Demetrius, one of these later rulers of the Greco-Bactrian kingdom, is going to have a big war effort that actually gets down into India. And they fight against the Mauryan Empire quite substantially. And this guy made these coins where he's wearing a skinned elephant as a hat to symbolize that he defeated the Indian people. So there's some symbolism here. It's not just me pandering to the elephants, but also elephants, right? I don't know how I'm going to be able to fit elephants into the next I actually do know what the next discussion is next week. I have remembered what my plans were initially. So next Thursday, I don't know how I'm going to be able to fit elephants into a discussion on Confucianism. So yeah, not drawn to scale. Yeah, right. He didn't actually wear a hat of an elephant. All right. Next little group is a group called Parthia. And again, we're moving slightly more to the east here, or sorry, the west. And the Parthians are going to first show up right around here. And they're not going to be that big of a threat initially. Let's look at a map of the Parthians. You can see them here and the yellow, the Parthians right next to the Seleucid Empire. You can again see our Greco-Bactrians. We can see the Mauryans down here. So the Parthians are going to have this kind of region that is right here on the border of the Caspian Sea. It's got some of these trade routes in it. Originally, they had been part of the Greco-Bactrian kingdom at the Greco-Bactrian kingdom's height, but they're actually going to become independent not too long after the Greco-Bactrians break away. This is going to be down around the 240s. The Parthians are going to be sort of the success story of tonight's group. The rest of these countries and kingdoms and empires are eventually going to kind of fizzle out. The Parthians are going to become the dominant power of Central Asia for hundreds of years. They're going to start off kind of slow, but they're going to gain steam pretty quickly, and they're going to benefit a lot from the collapse of the Seleucid Empire, which we'll talk about eventually in the next phase. So who were these people? Well, again, they're from Central Asia. They're mostly related to people from what we would call today Iran, ethnically speaking. But they're also going to be, again, a little bit heterogeneous when it comes to genetic stuff. Their nobility and the ruling family people are going to be Iranian, but you're going to also see a lot of people just kind of moving through this area. There are going to be nomadic groups coming out of Central Asia that settle down in Parthia. There's going to be people from the Seleucid Empire that move up into Parthia. So you have these sort of, these Greek people that are going to be in the area. You have some people that are coming over from this region. So there's a lot of uniformity in the ruling class and in the nobility, but the people that they're ruling are a mix of people. They have a unique language. They have a unique written language as well. They're going to initially be fairly okay with the Greek lifestyle, culturally speaking. There's going to be a really heavy lean on native religion, though. They're going to be initially very Zoroastrian, and when the Greeks showed up, there is apparently some evidence in the Parthian region where they tried to syncretize Greek gods with the gods of the Zoroastrians, even though that doesn't necessarily work very well considering the state of the Zoroastrian deities and the fact that they're not fully considered deities. But if you want to know more about Zoroastrianism, go check out the stream VOD on Zoroastrianism. One of my favorite ancient religions, by the way, to study about and think about. So anyway, you have also a mix of agricultural and pastoral food production. So you've got a mix of not only people groups, but also lifestyles in the area. Of course, you have cities that are based around trade. And over time, the Parthians are going to start pushing out this sort of Hellenic lifestyle. As they become more independent, they're also going to shirk more and more of the Greek influence. By the time we get to a guy named Arsaces, who begins the Arsacid dynasty, you're going to see a sort of resurgence of good old-fashioned Parthian culture, the resurgence of Zoroastrianism, a move back towards dress and practice that's more Parthian and less Greek. And this is a pretty evident move because of the people surrounding them. You have the Seleucid Empire, which of course is trying its almost darndest to be Greek. On the other side of the Parthians, you have this Greco-Bactrian kingdom who is still holding very diligently onto this Greek stuff. Even though they're mixing it with other things, they're still not getting rid of it. And so for the Parthians to develop their identity, they really just go back to being sort of who they were to begin with. So originally Arsaces is going to be a satrap under the Seleucid Empire, but there's going to be a lot of hubbub, which we've already talked about with the Seleucid Empire, especially with them fighting the remnants of the rest of Alexander's leadership. And so these guys are going to break away. Arsaces is going to do a little bit of unifying. He's going to try to bring some of these disparate people groups into a more cohesive alliance, which is successful. And even though the Seleucid Empire continuously beats against the Parthian region, they're never able to completely wipe them out. The Parthians have a couple of big bonuses to the region. Most notably, you can tell just by looking at it here, they have this really big high ground. They have the high ground. I can't believe I made that reference, but sure, why not? Anyway, they have a lot of fortification spots and they can run into the hills. So every time the Seleucids show up to fight them, if the Parthians are not going to be able to completely stand their ground, they can retreat to very, very defensible fortified positions. And then the Seleucids just have to basically either decide to lay siege to them in the middle of enemy territory or go back home. And the Seleucids almost always choose to go back home. So even though the Parthians during this period of time are not going to be able to completely gain what they might consider a peaceful independence, they're definitely going to be able to enjoy self-rule. With so much Star Wars in the news, why not? I don't know. I didn't know that there was a lot of Star Wars in the news other than the new Mandalorian episodes coming out, which have been uneven this season. I really fear that the bigwigs at Disney recognized the popularity of Mandalorian Season 1 and then decided to get much more involved with Mandalorian Season 2. And even though Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have managed to keep in a lot of the touchstones that made Mandalorian Season 1 really good, you can really see that the administration of Disney is really trying to make this like the larger Star Wars cinematic universe workhorse. Like, we're going to connect everything with the Mandalorian, which has been done to limited benefit, in my opinion, this season. Some of the stuff has been legit great. There were some scenes, and I won't spoil any of the story, but there have been a lot of scenes where I've been able to do like the pointing Leonardo DiCaprio meme and go, "That's from Akira Kurosawa." Like, I know exactly that's the Forbidden Temple, or you can point at these like, "That's the showdown from the Regulators from what was that Regulators, like 1957, 58." Anyways, one of those spaghetti westerns that everybody loved. So you can still see a lot of that stuff there, but you can also see how things are getting shoehorned in, like heavy with a shoehorn this episode or this season. So that's a whole discourse on The Mandalorian season 2. That was for free. Come for the history, stay for the Star Wars commentary. Anyway, so Arsaces and his dynasty are going to set up a rule in Parthia that's going to last for the next 400 years. They're easily the most successful group of all of these people that we're talking about tonight. So, a couple of honorable mentions that are going to be big in the future. There's a group of people right here called the Nabateans who are going to be a pretty big deal. There's a group of people down here called the Oxamites that are going to be a pretty big deal. And there's a group of people right here called the Armenians that are going to be a pretty big deal. All of them are better handled in the next phase, though. So, just to say that. The next group that we're going to talk about, though, is a group that we mentioned last time, and it sits right over here. I didn't show Arsaces. Sorry. I'm just forgetting all of my images tonight. Let's look at Arsaces. Well, he looks like a map. Boom. This guy. Oh, yeah. Look at that handsome devil. Oh, Arsaces. That's him. Now, you can actually see this guy seated, and he's holding a bow, which is pretty, emphatic because, again, composite bows are becoming the thing. But here you go. Arsaki. Oh, yeah. Neat head design. He's wearing a hat. This weird flat thing right here is supposed to be sort of a royal headdress. What's she sitting on? This is actually a god. And that's supposed to be some sort of stylized bench. I believe that's supposed to be Apollo, but I'm not 100% certain. Or maybe it's Heracles. Yeah, it's hard to tell, but anyway, there you go. The legs are out of proportion here. This is really bad foreshortening going on here. Ancient history gaming chair, right. Anyway, so there's Arsaces, and here is Numidia. And we mentioned Numidia a little bit last week at the very, very end of our discussion on Carthage. And we talked about them becoming an independent nation. But they're going to be a fairly decent-sized, important group when it comes to stuff that we'll talk about in our next phase. So, who are the Numidians? Well, it's a great question. They are ethnically a group... Oh, I need to change all this stuff too. They are ethnically Berber. It's B-E-R-B-E-R. And they have a genetic heritage that's still running today. If you go to this area, these people that are living in this region today, which would be Tunisia, Morocco, parts of Libya, these people are still Berbers today. Where's Old Midia? Old. Bleh, I can't even say that word. Old Midia. I'm not sure what Old Midia is, just to be honest. Did I miss a joke? You have New Midia. Oh, ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Oh man, that's a good one. That's a good one. And I'm sitting here like I actually went to Google and I'm like, how do I not know what Old Midia is? Like, how do I not have I got this giant gap in my historical knowledge and I don't even know where this entire country or city or people group is? Holy moly, where's my brain at? And it was just a pun. Sometimes I get so much in like expository mode that I forget to let in the joke filter. For some reason, I do that with Kelly Howlett's puns a lot. I don't know if Kelly's in the room tonight, but yeah, new media, old media. Well played. Seymour looking down at Shade, pathetic. Oh man, I know. So bad. I have to read the room. See, it's so hard without social cues, though. Like, if Moose had been in the same room as me and had gone, hey, where's old Midia? And I'd be like, oh, ha. But without those social cues and that inflection, it's hard to pick up sometimes. So the text just doesn't carry it. Not nearly as bad as the Sith fiasco. Yeah. I'm still never going to live that one down, am I, Motivic? But I eventually get there. Okay, so who are the new Midians? Well, the new Midians live in northern Africa again. These people are Berbers, and they are city dwellers, but pastoral and agricultural farmers. So we have both flocks and herds, and we have planting and fields and stuff like that. So, and this is really going to depend on how far up country you are. Again, this area is different today than it looked in the ancient world. So this region would have been much more fertile. But as you get into the more rugged areas here away from the coastline, you are going to see more herding. And yes, horses is one of the big things that they herd. The Numidians are incredibly good horseback archers, and they had developed a name for themselves as being horseback archers prior to Carthage expanding over that direction. The Numidians had been somewhat of a mercenary group. Even when Carthage controlled the region, they were still quite able to be bought if there was a right price. So they are mostly shamanistic in religion, but as time goes on, they become more sort of an organized polytheistic religion. There's a lot of, especially Greek influence here. Greek influence both from Carthage, but also from Greece themselves. If you'll remember, or if you didn't know, the Greeks had become very interested in expanding over into this western part of the Mediterranean for trade purposes. So you're going to start seeing the development of a more organized pantheon and less of a shamanistic or animistic belief. They are going to be fairly polygamous, but typically individuals only had one wife and then had concubines. Whether or not that the child of such a marriage could inherit possessions was a little bit in question. We don't know too terribly much about the Numidians, mostly because they don't have written sources of their own. They did have a runic script, but this is mostly for inscriptions and not really used to write documents. It would be more like, I'm going to make a statue and I'm going to write the guy's name under it, but that's about as far as their writing ever gets. So all of the textual documents that we have about them come from other cultures describing the Numidians, which of course we can't always trust because people are biased and they look down at other people. And the Romans especially are going to have a lot to say about these Numidians, especially rulers like a guy named Jugurtha, who we'll talk about later on. Rome and the Numidians are going to initially start off pretty friendly and then have some real big blow-ups later on. They do have a unique language that's unique to the region. their runes are actually called Tiffany runes, pronounced almost like Tiffany the name, but Tiffany. And the person that is going to be responsible for getting these people their independence is a guy named Massinissa, who Word thinks is spelled wrong, just like they think Numidians is spelled wrong. Don't pay attention to row or to the. Here, I can just do it this way. Ignore and ignore. I don't like the little red squiggly line. It triggers me. Not really, but it's annoying. Okay, so let's look at Massinissa. I've got a picture of a coin. Boom. Here we go. This is Massinissa, and of course, as you might expect from a group of people that are particularly interested in horseback, there's going to be a horse on the coin. So Massinissa is initially a sort of he's a regional leader, but there were two groups of Numidians. There were two different tribes of Numidians, and they had a little bit of a conflict between each other. But they also both had a larger conflict with Carthage. Carthage, of course, had expanded out into their territory and conquered the area, brought them under to the Carthaginian dynasty's rule. That would have been under the Magonid dynasty, if you remember all of that stuff. But it's kind of here or there. Of course. A horse is a horse, of course. And no one talks to a horse, of course. Except, of course, if that famous horse is the famous Mr. Ed. I used to watch Mr. Ed a lot when I was a kid, and I don't know why I liked that show. I've watched a couple of episodes of it since I've been an adult. I don't get it. It's just kind of a dumb show. The horse never leaves the barn, or very rarely leaves the barn. It's kind of like Wilson from Home Improvement. It's just always there behind the fence dispensing knowledge, which, I don't know. Anyway, I don't even know how long that show ran. I know there are lots of episodes of it that used to come on Nick at Night when I was a kid. So I've seen a lot. You can't remember anything about it other than that? Yeah. I know that they had a lot of stock footage of that horse, and they used that stock footage religiously. You'd see the same scene 3 or 4 times in the same episode. So I don't know if the horse died and they had to recycle footage, or I don't know what. Who knows? That was a weird time in television history. Anyway, Massinissa is going to unite the two different tribes of Numidians, and then he's actually going to start reaching out to the Romans. This is during the Second Punic War, and the guy leading the Romans at the time was a guy named Scipio, Publius Cornelius Scipio. And Scipio makes a deal with Massinissa that if the Numidians betrayed the Carthaginians, that Rome would recognize Massinissa as an independent ruler. And this is, of course, where we get Numidia. Now, the Numidians are going to continue to be an independent nation for another couple hundred years, but they're going to run into conflict with Rome, and that's going to be a pretty catastrophic moment for them. Better than My Mother the Car. I don't actually know if I've ever seen any of that. I don't even know if I'm familiar with that. Part of my brain is telling me that I've heard of that before, but I can't place any images in my head that correspond to that title. I'm sure that's a bizarre television show, though. My Mother the Car. Interesting. But I guess it is what it is. Okay. So, one more group. It's on YouTube. It stars the other Van Dyke. Not that one that everybody knows. That other one. That other Van Dyke. Okay. So, our last group for tonight is a group that we've kind of mentioned a couple of times, but never in what I would consider in a specific from their own point of view. And those are the Gauls. And the Gauls are an interesting group from a particular heritage. They're basically Celtic, but they come from one big migration that came into Europe from this area, but they're going to settle all over the place. And some of these Gauls go on to be the actual Celts, especially these up here and these down here. But these Gauls right here and these right here are going to be fairly significant players in the coming times for a couple of different reasons. Number one, these Gauls over here in what is modern day France and Belgium. Hey, look, Belgium. Wonder where that comes from. And these Gauls right down in here, the Cisalpine Gauls, and these over here, which are going to be called Transalpine Gauls, are going to be really big opponents of the Romans. And we've already talked about the Gauls sacking Rome back in the 300s BC, but they're going to continue to be a thorn in the side of the Romans. And the Gauls over here in what is called Pannonia, or the Pannoni, are going to end up being fairly common mercenaries. And people are going to hire these people all the time. And we're not just talking about small groups hiring the Gauls. We're talking about big people. We will see Gauls being hired out by the Ptolemies, the Seleucids, the Romans. Lots of different big empires are going to use, especially those Pannoni Gauls, as good, reliable mercenaries. So, who are these Gallic people? Well, again, they are they're Celtic, but they're from all over that part of area of Europe. They have some over even in Turkey, in the region of Galatia. They are initially Celtic, but over time you see these Gauls intermarry with people from their regional differences, and you're going to start seeing different kind of branches of them. The ones up in Ireland and Great Britain are going to become fairly different culturally than the ones that stay over in the mainland of Europe. And then the ones that are over in the Balkan Peninsula even become a little bit separated from the ones that are in France. And you're going to see this sort of developing independent kind of spread of different Gallic tribes. Religiously, they're going to be polytheistic, and they're also going to be very syncretistic, meaning that as they expand and move around, they're going to be very interested in sharing gods with other cultures, especially with the Greeks and the Romans. You start seeing a lot of overlap between Gallic gods and Roman gods, and Gallic gods and Greek gods. They're going to have a fairly wide mix of lifestyles. Some of them are going to be in big cities. They're going to have kings. They're going to be various kings of the Gauls. Several of them, like Brennus, we've already mentioned. Another guy that was going to be a big deal later on is a guy named Vercingetorix. So they're going to have big kings with cities, but they're also going to have some semi-nomadic people, and they're also going to still have some very much kind of hunter-gatherer people that are living very traditional lifestyles in what we would consider a Stone Age lifestyle in the middle of the Iron Age. So we don't also have any written evidence from their point of view. They don't have a written language of their own, but they do have a language that they speak, which gets described by other people as being very harsh and very barky sounding. Even the word barbarian, which we use today, is an onomatopoeia of the Romans making fun of Gallic languages, because they heard the people speaking this native Gallic language and they thought it sounded like people going bar 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 bar, kind of like your Charlie Brown teacher, your womp 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 womp. But barbarian is actually mocking the way that their language sounded to the Romans. So, yeah, we don't know a lot about the actual way that they lived. We have a few documents from the Roman perspective that describe their lifestyle and their culture. We know that they did have marriage laws. They had a lot of family relationships that were kind of close knit. You've been told that barbarian meant people with beards. I mean, the word beard comes from bard, not barb. But barbarian is a person who speaks like Barbar, a Barbarian, like Mississippi Ian. So a lot of them had beards, and the Gauls were big on facial hair. The Romans were not so big on facial hair. Most of the Roman leaders did not have the beard or the mustache, but the Gauls were big on it. Sometimes the Gauls leadership would just rock the big stash. Other times you see them in the full beard, or the full, like bushy beard. And that might have led to sort of a cultural concept that barbarians are people with beards, but the actual word itself comes from the description that I gave earlier. But yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I can say this one little thing though. One thing about the Gauls is that they become so closely in contact with the Romans that you see a lot of Roman people starting to dress like the Gauls, and they had a very specific style of dress with horizontal bars of colors, especially these kind of a bright yellow and a kind of a turquoise blue kind of color. And that becomes all the rage in Roman fashion for a little while. But again, you see these Gallic warlords pop up. You don't really see a single lasting unified government of the Gauls. What you do see is a period of time here and there where one big warlord will rise, unite a lot of the tribes, and then cause a lot of trouble. But you don't see a lasting unified dynasty or anything like that. So you have these sort of periods of cohesion and then disintegration, like Asterix. I'm not sure what Asterix is. Should I know that one? Is that a joke? I don't think that's a joke. Have I missed another one? Let me Google that. Oh, it's a comic book. Adventures of Asterix is a series about Gaulish warriors who have adventures fighting the Roman Republic during the Caesar. He's a Gaul from a comic strip. There we go. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. I've never seen this before. That's pretty neat. Have they translated it to English? My French is bad. Yeah, I didn't know about that. I have never heard of this before. I'm looking at it now. This is great content here, buds. Like you watching me look at Wikipedia. Asterix of the Gauls. Okay. Yeah, this looks right up my alley. I'm going to have to check this stuff out. Thanks for the reference. I'm digging this stuff. But yeah, I'm looking at photos here. Like the guy that has the big blue stripes. That's very Gallic. Very much so. And they both have the big honking mustaches. Yes. this is very stereotypical Gallic stuff. He's wearing the red trousers. Yes, okay. Okay, yeah. Someone did their homework. I like this already. Okay, so that's some of the things that I'm going to be doing this weekend. Thanks, Fern. I appreciate this this nod. This is cool stuff. All right. Well, anyway, those are the Gauls. Again, they are going to be a pretty big deal. We're going to talk about them multiple times in the coming terms. They're going to be showing up in lots of different places, and they're going to be kind of popping up out of nowhere, like, and then came the Gauls. They're also, I mean, they're not horseback fighter people, but they do think horses are cool. And they do have religious ceremonies with horses in them. So they kind of fit more into the age of the horse, I guess, than the age of the elephant. So I guess that's moving towards the future, huh? Well, all right, ladies and gents. That is all that I had planned for tonight. But, as always, that does not mean that we have to go away. If you all have questions about anything, if you would like to redeem any channel points, if there's anything that you want to talk about or bring up, now is the time. I'd be happy to answer questions about whatever's going on in the world. There's you can summon the adventure hats or opinion hats or the puppy, or we could just chat. I am pretty open. I finished up a little bit earlier than I did, but I knew that this one's going to kind of be a bit of a short stream. So last one was really long. This one's a little short. It all kind of balances out, right? Anybody have anything? And if you don't, that's okay. I'm not going to like pressure everybody. You must communicate. You must talk. Do the thing. Given the large trade routes across Europe, Africa, and Asia, were there pandemics that broke out, or nothing until the plague? Oh yeah, man. There were definitely pandemics. The plague has been around multiple times, and when I say the plague, I do mean like the plague, the bubonic plague. It has been around many, many times. And there are going to be about 5 or 6 different bouts of that. And it's going to be carried along these trade routes. The big one, like the big bubonic Black Death thing that you want to talk about later on in the 1300s, comes over from Asia. And it comes over with people like the Mongols who were moving around a lot. I know about 1010 and I know about Prince Valiant. Yes, I do know about those. We had plague last week, right? In Sardinia. Yes, we did. We had plague in... it got over to Sardinia, but actually started in Sicily. But that came to Sicily because the Greeks brought it over from Egypt. So, yes, there was plague, though. And that actually killed one of the Shofets of Carthage. In the... I guess that would have been the second of the Sicilian Wars. So, yeah. Indeed. But, yeah, the stuff that moves around on, especially the Silk Road, once it starts hitting its height, is it's a corridor of trade of ideas, but also trade in bugs and infectious diseases. So yeah, it definitely has a big role in that. How do we find out about ancient plague? Historical epidemiologists? Yes, actually so. One of the great things about, that I should not have said it that way. Let me pause, rewind that, and then kind of explain this in a better way. One of the interesting things about some viruses, especially, is that they leave behind genetic evidence in the remains of people. So we can dig up these people's bones and then go do DNA testing on them, and we can actually find these little snips or chunks of viral DNA, and we can go, yep, this person had so and so. When it comes to plague, it's a little bit more difficult because you have to find usually stuff that was pretty deep in a bone. Plague is carried by a bacteria instead of by a virus, so you have to find something that is usually in like bone marrow. So you have to find a big thigh bone or something like that and get down into the marrow to find leftover bacteria pieces. It's a little bit harder to identify. Usually what we find, though, when it comes to the plague is mass graves. And especially during really big breakouts of plague, the stories usually show up in historical sources. So the ancient people who are writing the history talk about, oh yeah, there's a big honking plague. So we can then carbon date the bones and compare that to the location, and then compare that to the ancient sources and go, this is pretty clearly a mass grave caused by the plague. And this is big. This is pretty true of things like the Justinianic plague, which hits the Byzantine Empire in the middle 500s. The Black Death. But even with things that aren't technically plague, that are referred to as a big plague-like infection, like with the sickness or plague, finger quote, that hit Athens during the not the Punic Wars, the Peloponnesian Wars. Well, we found a big mass grave that was pretty clearly from these people who died from all of this sickness that was running around in Athens, which is suspected to be typhus, based on what happens to the people. But we're still not 100% sure exactly what that plague of Athens was. But there are people that do epidemiology in archaeology. Like, there's a crossover field there. A really interesting area too. One of the things that I can really say that I've been happy to see about archaeology specifically, history in general not so much, is the willingness to embrace other areas of expertise, other fields. What are the Americas doing around now? I'm guessing that you mean around 200 BC. So in the Americas, we do have some emerging cultures. I will be talking about some of them in the next phase. We're going to start seeing groups of organized cities. You don't see... and probably what I'll do in the next phase is a bit of a regional wrap-up like I did of this, and we'll mention some of these American groups. The big, powerful American groups are really going to get started into the AD period, but some of these people are going to have ancestors that show up back in this area, especially in a couple of regions. One particular area, the Andean cultures, which we've talked about in the past, the Inca. The Inca, of course, is actually a fairly bad name for this large group of people. The Inca Empire itself only lasted for just maybe a couple hundred years, not too terribly long. But this region right here is largely and better referred to as Andean culture. So you have a group of people here that are establishing independent groups of civilization. Also right around in this area. You have the beginnings of some people there. But most of this part of America is still in a very primitive hunter-gatherer state. They're not necessarily moving towards any sort of what we would call city dwelling or a civilization. And civilization is a term that gets used a lot to mean a slur, like they say uncivilized. I don't use it that way. To me, what I call, and what most historians call a civilization, is an identifiable culture that has capacity to pass down its knowledge through written language. So we're talking about people that live in cities that have writing, that are going to be able to kind of cohesively pass down that stuff. Those mountains are insane. Why did the people settle there as opposed to on the shores? Well, so the Indian culture actually shows up on the shoreline. And the big cities are mostly going to be here along the shoreline initially, but they move up into this sort of backside of the mountain range as well. But honestly, the the region itself is more hospitable than it looks. There is quite a bit of rainfall in the area that's going to allow for plentiful crop growth, and especially once those people figure out how to make terraces in the mountains, they're going to be able to grow a surplus of food. Go for it, Hunk. You don't have to raise your hand, man. Yes, terraced farming, exactly. Good call, Motivic, exactly. Dude, you don't have to ask, man. Just, just to quote Dumb and Dumber, just go, man. Just go. Sure. Can I go to the bathroom? The correct answer is, may I go to the bathroom? Man, I used to drive students crazy with that. When I taught high school and we had to do hall passes and stuff, can I go to the bathroom? Like, I don't know, can you? I was that guy. I was also a punk teacher when I was right out of college, and I did not connect very well with my students. Pedantry, yeah, exactly. If you hang around me enough, you'll know that pedantry can be both something that I'll die on as a hill, but also need to wait till Shane emails you a hall pass. Yeah, so pedantry can be both funny and sarcastic, but also something that I take seriously at times. I correct people's grammar quite frequently, and I know that it gets on people's nerves. So, hall pass emote. we're quite a distance from another emote. You have to have a certain number of subscribers to get there, and I don't ask for subscribers. I feel very, very benefited, and that's not the right word. I'm getting awkward and weird because I'm talking about receiving gifts. I am incredibly grateful for people who subscribe to the channel, and I do not take that lightly. In my school, we had to sign out to go to the bathroom so the teachers could check the schedules and see if people were meeting up in the bathroom. Wow. I'm suspecting that there was some sort of shenanigans going on in the bathroom. Like people were meeting up to do illicit activity.
I'm Spartacus!
Hunk.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus. Thank you, Hunk. Much appreciated, man. And I got another emote. What did I get? I got the Twitch Bits Reward 2020 gift emote. Okay. I'm getting all of these 2020 emotes. This is Sparta. Close. We'll give it to you. Thanks, Hunk. Appreciate it, man. Seriously. All right. Anybody want to redeem any points or do anything like that? I am... Ooh, where did we get that? Did we get the air horn? Oh. Apparently Brittany got a speak up emote. Okay. And there's Athena. Oh, Athena. Such a cute pupper. What's in the news? Oh man, lots of stuff in the news. Let me call the puppy and then we'll talk about the news. Do aliens exist? We can talk about that one if you want to. Let me call the puppy. I think she's coming, but I'm pretty sure she was asleep. Okay, so the guy that was the head of the Israeli Space Agency for about 30 years decided that after he retired, he was going to write this big book. And to promote this book, he did some interviews this week and said that aliens, in fact, do exist. Okay, here comes the puppy. There's the puppy. Hello, Kaylee. You come see me? Come here. Come here. Come here. Come on. Come on. There you go. There's the puppy. Oh, yes. Oh, Kaylee Poo. Hello. Hello. I see the chicken, too. Yes. Oh, the puppy. What you doing? You want to put this right here so you can see your fans? No, I just want my chicken. Give me my chicken. What are you doing? What are you doing? She is currently without her collar, which we call the naked puppy. She just got a bath today. Where are you going? Where are you going? Your fan base wants to see you. Oh, the puppy. Yeah, she was getting pretty stinky. It's been very, very cold here, and we try not to give her baths. That is the derpiest tail wag you've ever seen in a dog, and it's adorable. She is kind of derpy. Just as an entity, she is very derpy. Yeah, so it warmed up the last couple of days, so we figured it was either now or never. So we Brittany gave her a bath, and we usually let her run around for a little while without her collar on, but we constantly cast aspersions at her for exposing her nakedness to the world and being a harlot and all of that stuff. It's all in good fun, and she doesn't know what we're saying, so it's okay. But anyway, yeah, so this guy that was the head of the Israeli Space Agency came out and said that aliens, in fact, do exist. Aliens. And that the big governments of the world had known about this for decades and were in communication with the leaders of something he called the Galactic Federation of Planets. No joke here. And that they had been in contact with all the world leaders, and that President Trump of the United States had come very close to releasing this news to the world, but the ambassador aliens from the Galactic Federation of Planets talked him out of it, saying that humans weren't ready for this knowledge yet, and that when the knowledge actually came out, it was going to cause all of this panic and stuff. So they talked Trump down, which I think is a dead giveaway that the whole story is bogus, because I don't know the last time anyone has successfully talked President Trump out of doing something he wanted to do. When asked why, the interviewer asked the Israeli scientist guy why he had decided that it was time to let the information go, and he said that it was now time. I'm like, okay, so it wasn't time 3 years ago or 2 years ago or last year, but it's time now. That coincidentally corresponds with the release of your book where you talk about how aliens exist. So yeah, there's no ulterior motive there or anything. First contact has happened. Where's Doc Cochran? Yeah, exactly. The sad thing is that the talking down bit is the least plausible story. Right, like not the Galactic Federation of Planets, not the aliens, the talking Trump down. That's the less plausible part of the story. Mac wants to believe. I want to believe. I don't know about aliens. I mean, the universe is a really, really big place. And there's the law of big numbers, where the bigger the number is, the least likely the statistical probability is 0, right? I'm sure a good probing did the trick. Ooh, let's not talk about the probing. Best results ever. They did the probe. It came back. I'm in great health. Healthiest president ever. Aliens said so. I got the proof. The lights were blinking the right way. They were making the right noises. Best probe ever. I'm sure that's how it would come across if it did come across. Anyway, so yeah, that's one thing in the news. He's already ranting about aliens. Nobody can be probed like me. I'm the best at being probed. Oh man. So I hope that answered the what's in the news with the aliens thing. I could give you another actual news story if you would like. The Federation is talking. Aliens are saying. Anyway, we're coming very close. I feel like I need to give an actual news story instead of the alien story. I know that alien story is technically a real news story, but I feel like I need to talk about something that has some validity to actually redeem those points. So let me throw one more of them out there. We are, as a world, coming really close to witnessing what might be a fairly significant economic issue if the European Union and Great Britain can't get its acts together and solve out how the whole Brexit scenario is going to work out. The deadline for that is December 31st. So we're 21 days away. Hey, MC Foreign, how's it going? You missed a talk about some ancient people. You missed me doing an impression. We talked about aliens a little bit. Talked about aliens, and we talked about elephants. We talked about horses. And now we're talking about what's in the news. There is a redemption, point redemption thing below the chat where people can redeem what's in the news, and I'll just talk about a news story that I know about. So we're right now talking about Brexit and how the European Union and the government of Great Britain, or I guess technically the United Kingdom, is having a hard time nailing down exactly how that's going to work. One of the things that I was somewhat pleased to see was that Boris Johnson backed down on a what has become known as a hard border between Ireland and Northern Ireland. So to clarify what I mean here, wrong button. There we go. Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom, thanks to the British expansion and conquering of the region. And Ireland down here is another country. So Northern Ireland is technically its own independent country, and capital Belfast. Ireland is down here, capital Dublin. And this area along the border is going to be a problem because while the UK was in the EU, the European Union, there was a lot of transit and commerce going on around here. And one of the things that is a big deal with that border is that it was one of the biggest things that brought an end to a lot of violence in Ireland, especially with the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, who was basically perpetrating terrorist attacks against the United Kingdom to try to get England out of Northern Ireland. So when situations sort of normalized, that was a good thing, and it helped end what the European or the British call the Troubles, which is like the most condescending thing ever, by saying, hey, the Irish people wanted to be a unified nation and England didn't want them to be, and this was troublesome. Anyway, had a hard border gone back up where there was effectively no crossing of the Irish and Northern Irish borders, that was going to be an issue. And there had already been sort of rumblings about how bad that was going to be and how troublesome that was going to be and how potentially violent that was going to turn. So Boris Johnson had pretty firmly planted his foot down and said, no, we're going to do this on our terms. We're not going to be dictated to. And if we want to make a hard border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, it's going to happen. And he has recently backed down on that, which has made me a lot more convinced that he actually does want to make a deal. There was a lot of worry that he was secretly hoping for the no deal, so that it would sort of wreck the EU economy, but that would be really bad for the UK and probably for the world as well. The economy right now, everybody, if you are watching the United States Stock Exchange or the Global Stock Exchange, you'll know that the markets are really high up. But that recovery is being driven a lot by companies buying back their own stocks and not necessarily by actual investment. The economy is a little bit weaker than it actually seems, especially with the second big spike in COVID and subsequent lockdowns going back into place in several countries. If the EU economy and the British economy both go belly up, that's going to hurt everybody around them. And money printing. Yes, let's not forget about quantitative easement, which is a great term for we don't actually have money, so we're just going to make more of it and say we have money. I used to teach economics, by the way, so massive quantitative easing. Yes, for over a long period of time, much longer than it should have gone on. And then it left a little bit, and then we brought it right on back. Yeah. I'm sure everybody is super thrilled about talking about the ins and outs of global economy. Economics was a fun class for me. I enjoyed that a lot. I enjoyed teaching that a lot. But anyway. All right. Anything else? And once again, because I'm on stream, my nose is furiously itching. I have no idea why my nose starts itching while I'm on stream. I really feel like some sort of angry Twitch spirit is upset that I'm not yelling profanity while playing a video game, as Twitch is sort of designed for, and is trying to get me to yell profanity at how badly my nose itches. I actually loved my econ course. There we go. I did teach economics. Favorite economist? I don't have a favorite one because all of them. See, the problem with economics and economists in particular is that they develop one idea and then they get really, really myopic. And they begin to only see the world through that particular lens because they're so used to arguing with other economists. Like, so you talk about Adam Smith and capitalism, and he argued capitalism up and down, left and right, backwards and forwards. But he was so myopic that he didn't understand that capitalism in his time was effectively killing people. John Maynard Keynes, one of the more famous kind of modern economists, got so interested in this whole right time to spend and how to monitor deficits that he missed the fact that you still have to have money before you can spend it. Like, you can build up a debt, but you also have to be able to pay that debt off. And that's, he's like, oh, no, you just keep spending until you're out of the recession. And, I know nothing of economics. I just put my money into a tech stock fund and hold your breath. Well, that's kind of what we all have to do right now. Are you down with MMT? I mean, to a limited extent, but again, like, all of these big economic theories become just sort of a pigeonhole way to look at the universe. And if you only want to look at things through one lens, it just doesn't work. I know that a lot of my friends were really big on Krugman lately. Like the past 5 or 6 years, especially, Krugman was like basically untouchable. And then COVID hit and Krugman has like fallen off the face of the earth because all of his ideas have been shown to be kind of like based on the idea that things are always going to be good with the economy. Anyway, we don't have to sit here and quibble about individual economic theories. Let's go do a raid. Unless anybody else has any particular thing that you are interested in doing, redemption of points, bringing up a topic. Otherwise, I think we're going to go hit a raid, and then I'm going to go get some coffee, maybe. I am not used to talking. I can tell that because I have not been teaching as much lately. My voice is starting to kind of get a little raspy on me. Work. Work. I don't know if anybody's is hanging out on Steve Sketch's streams, but that's a little noise that the orc makes is womp womp. All right. So, not seeing anything further, we are going to go raid. It says work. I did not know that. We're going to go raid Studio Dogby. We have not raided Dogby in quite some time. Studio Dogby, cool artist, neat guy. Make sure to show him some love when we get over there. As always, when we do a raid, our battle cry is adventure. And then if you have them, throw those beautiful, beautiful adventure hats emotes into the chat. I will see you all next on Tuesday next week. And we will talk about the Contra. This is a viewer request episode. And then next Thursday, we will talk about Confucianism. So it's going to be a good week. Hope everybody has a great weekend. I'm going to hit the button here, and then I'll switch over to the outro screen. Thank you all so much for hanging out. Had a great time. Hope you had a good one too. And I will see everybody around the bend. Take it easy. That's the Iran Contra, but the Contra themselves, not the actual video game.